Hi everybody, Art Limbo here again, and for this video I want to do something a little different in terms of analyzing COVID-19 data with SQLite. We're starting to look at the spatial considerations, and what I want to do now is just exploit a little bit of a benefit to QGIS that allows us to perform spatial and temporal visualization of the COVID-19 data. Now to do this, I've brought in a little backdrop image and I've got it in that Lambert coordinate system. You can see that here, the EPSG 102004. What I'm going to do is I've got something called the Time Manager, but I've already installed it. What I want you to do, or if you would like to join me, is to go to Manage and Install Plugins. And here I've typed in the word temporal because I was looking for this and I knew it had something to do with spatio-temporal data. And a couple of things come up, which is interesting, but this one is called Time Manager. So again, you will click the install plugin. I could click the reinstall, but I've already done this. And this is going to allow us to create a time series visualization of our data. So what we're going to do is we're going to copy this SQL query and I will put it into the SQLite GUI. Now we've been starting to go through this process, and again, if you're just jumping into the video now, check the links down below. It might be worthwhile going back to the beginning because we're building up to these slightly more complicated queries. But we're playing this game each time where we're dropping a temporary table, I call it Spatial Table, and then we're creating a new one using this SQL statement. Then once that's created in SQLite, it's not quite as robust as Postgres or SQL Server or Oracle, so we have to sort of register the geometry layer and the geometry column. So we're using a command called recover geometry column. So we just run this over and over again. Let me just quickly run this and we'll talk about what we're doing here. In fact, why don't we, now that we've done that, let's get rid of all of this and then just run the select query. So what have we done? We're selecting the date, we're selecting the geometry, the state, and remember the increases in deaths, positivity rates, and hospitalizations are text fields that we've brought in. So that's why we've been using the cast function in SQLite to get us integer values of these increases. And we're doing it from the state and the daily. So again, as review, the state layer is actually a spatial layer that has the state boundaries. Now, I'll just bring that up real quick. So that's the state layer. It's the United States. And we're joining it where the state name in the daily, which are the daily case information, where it's equal to the USPS state code. So again, for Maryland is MD, and that links the two tables together. So what do we have? I have my date, and I have my geometry, my state, and then the number of positive increases, death increases, and hospitalizations. And as we go forward, what you'll see, of course, is we have to go down quite a ways. We're into March, and we'll get down to, here we go. You start getting into later in March. So remember, Washington State had that nursing home problem, so that's where they started seeing some deaths. We've talked in a previous video as well, a lot of states don't keep their hospitalization, so unfortunately that doesn't quite work out the way we'd hope. And now we start to see again more of Washington, more of other states coming in for deaths as we move down. So here California had 4 of them, another 4 for Washington, and you can just see now we're stopping at 500 records, but you're getting the idea of what's actually happening within the state, or within the United States, in terms of these 3 variables. Well, we're going to bring this back in, so I'm going to hit that Control-Shift-L, and that's going to open up my connection to the SQLite database that we were just working with. I'll hit Connect, and we're going to add the spatial table in. And we'll close this. So if we look at this, this is actually not just one state, right, of Montana or Idaho. There's many states representing a record for each of the dates. So we'll come in and we're going to actually create a thematic map. So we'll go to graduated. Let's look at, how about we look at the positive increase first. And we're going to use a color ramp of red. I want to use 7 categories. And instead of equal interval, let's look at natural breaks. And we'll classify that. Okay, so that's done. You can see that. Why is this blinking? It's blinking because, like in Texas, there's many Texas geometries that are being displayed. Now we do all this because we want to come back into our plugins and open up the time manager. Now in this, I'm going to have to go to my settings and I'm going to add a layer. The layer obviously is Spatial Table, and we're going to leave it at this. The date is our start time, and this is a date field, so it recognizes it as a date. And we're going to show the frame for 100 milliseconds. And we'll hit OK. Now, how much do I want to show this? Do I want to show it by months, days, weeks, right? Hours, seconds, or years? So we're going to do it for every week. So this is going back to January 22nd, and I'm going to move this up a little further. All right, now you can start to see some more cases that began to pop up here on February 16th. So let's run this. And you begin to see now New York had a lot more of those cases, and you can start to see this growing. And now you're seeing some of the changes where the south is getting more of the cases, and that's becoming more red. And here we're into September and up to September 27th. Well, that's all good. We can, instead of look at positive increase, why don't we look at the death increase? And as I do that, I have to classify it once again. So now I have new values for the increase in deaths. So I'll bring this back here. And we can, let's start up. We didn't have deaths for quite some time. So again, you saw those first deaths occurred in Washington State. And this runs all the way through. And again, I saw that New York was blank, and I assume that might be just some data issue, so you can look further into that. But again, go back to any date in time, and you can see around the week of August 12th, we're seeing more of that southern growth. And August 21st. Now I'm looking at the actual date, so it could be, if you saw that Florida was empty, there were no records in Florida being displayed. All right, so I wasn't crazy about the fact that sometimes Florida didn't show anything, and the reason again was if something wasn't entered on, let's say April 24th, then it was blank, and it was showing it by week, and if it landed on that week, that's what happened. So we've got another query here, and we're going to do it based on the weekly average. And we've already issued a query like this in the past. If you remember, we were getting weekly averages. So let's, same idea, create table as, and we're going to register that geometry column. But let's look at what we're doing differently here. Here I'm getting the week value for the particular week. Why? Because I'm using a few different aggregates. I'm getting the sum of all the hospitalizations for that, and all the positivity rates and all the deaths for that particular week. I'm pulling out the week from the date. And I'm getting the minimum date, returning that as date. Why am I doing that? Well, I need some day or some date field in order for that time manager to work in QGIS. So again, this is just working this through, and it wasn't working before. I think, okay, what am I doing wrong here? Oh, I need to have a date. How do I get just the one weekly date? Well, the way you do that, of course, is you grab the minimum date, and that's going to get probably the very first date of that week, because we're going to group it by the week. So we're going to have so here's our different weeks. This is week 9 of the year, 10, 11, 12, and then this is telling me the minimum date for that particular week. And we come down here again, so now we're into August 31st for that week. And in this case, I'm just looking at the Maryland ones, and you can see our different information. And again, we're getting the sum for each of those grouped by that particular week. And all I'm doing is reusing code we've already been very familiar with. We've already done this plenty of times, and we've done these aggregate clauses plenty of times. So I'll run this. And that's done, and we'll come back in QGIS, and let's just add that layer. Control Shift L, and let's add that spatial table. We'll close it. So there's the United States again, and what we want to do is visualize this in a thematic map, and let's choose, why don't we look at, let's look at deaths. Why don't we'll look at deaths first, and we'll look at, again, natural breaks, and I'm going to go with 7 classes. We'll classify that. That's done, and now I have to go back into our settings, and we're going to add a layer. And in this case, we're going to add the spatial table, not WK, that's just an integer. I need to have a date field, because see, Time Manager requires that the layers match the specified time format. So that's why I had to do that. And we'll leave that and hit OK. And then we can do it 1 week at a time. Let's scroll forward a little bit. A little further. There we go. All right, now let's start to run this. And now you can see the deaths that are happening per week. We can do the same thing again for the positive increases. Classify that, and let's start around March. So this is where New York really started getting hit hard. And there we go. So you can start to see, and then again, here's that Sunbelt change as we went through the summer. So I just wanted to show you this before we got into the county data, because we'll do some visualizations with individual counties, and that way you can do it on your specific state. Well, anyway, I hope this video was helpful to you and that you'll give this a try. Please hit like below and consider subscribing to the channel, so that way when I release new videos, you'll be the first to find out that they've been released, and you can start doing more analysis of COVID-19 data. Also, leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear how you're visualizing your data both over space and time.